Anyway, dry watercolour paper then is an incredibly strong material. Because we're applying water to it, it makes it very weak material. And wet paper, I could actually take the back of the brush and stick it through it. It's literally as weak as that. So we're having to cope then with a material that consists of extreme qualities, from very dry and very strong to very wet and very weak. So your painting has to reflect that. Okay? The material that we're going to apply to it, watercolour paint, is made by grinding different kinds of materials together. Earth's a common one, regular browns and ochre and things, and chemicals, and it's ground into a powder as fine as talcum powder. You know what all that is, Dan, but it's what women use. It's anyway, very, very fine powder, and theoretically they could just pour that into these little boxes, but of course you would only need to sneeze once and you would have none left. It would be gone. So to stop it blowing away, they mix it with a very, very weak gum glue called gum arabic, which is the weakest glue that exists. I think it's the weakest glue. And it has to be weak. There's a great logic to this. It has to be weak so that you don't have to take your brush like this and grind it to get it out. The slightest little touch to that with a wet brush releases it. You're familiar with what I'm talking about. But it's that combination of this material with this material that my painting is all about. I know this is known as a Welton Way with watercolour, but it's driven by the logic of what the materials do, how the materials behave. Are you with me so far?
I'm with you.
Good. Now there are 5 ways to apply the paint, and each one is very, very, very wet. How wet?
Wet. Very, very, very wet.
Good God, you're all paying attention. It's lovely. Right. Method 1 of the five techniques. Method 1 is to take one pigment, one colour, one paint, and mix it with a lot of water. So take your brush, waggle it in the water, a lot of waggly, and the reason you waggly a lot is if there's any little remnant, residue of paint in the bristles, it'll wash it out. Then lift some up and then scrape it into the side of your mixing tray. See? Just take it. If you try and just drop it in, you'll be there all morning doing that. You think this is a boring old job?
Hey, this is a boring one.
Sure.
What do you do? Boring old what?
Yeah, you can do what Stan's got. Look, he has a little pipette. I use one of those. Yeah. I'll just now.
We need after making this little spoon.
Anyway, on the assumption you haven't got one of those, straight in half fill.
Forgot your?
Half fill.
You've got a big enough.
Excusez-moi,
Sorry,
madame.
we're talking.
Half fill one of your little mixing bowls. Half fill it.
Oh, half fill. I've more than half fill.
In other words, more than you think.
Let's start again then.
Then take your brush and go into one of the colours, only one, but not white and not black.
Oh.
We never use those, even though they do exist here.
No,
And just waggle your brush around in it, and bring it across and mix it into your mixing tray. Okay, 2 or 3 times till the evidence of it is obvious in the water. Now then you must mixy in order to totally disperse that solid to make what the chemists call slurry. It's a perfect mix of liquid and solid. And there should be no evidence of any solid paint in that little bowl. You with me? Right? Now then, here's another thing. This is called a brush, but it shouldn't be. It should be called a conveyor. Because the last thing you do with it is brush with it. You lift it up and make yourself a little square, about an inch square. Draw it with your wet brush and then immediately fill it before it has a chance to dry. And fill it until you've got a meniscus on it. What's the technical word for that, Steve?
A meniscus.
A meniscus. It's just that I can't spell it. In other words, it's got to sit with the surface, not enough down. More. And now don't brush it, just lift it over and touch it onto the centre. Like this, look. Fill your brush, bring it across, just touch it like that.
What, with a different colour?
No, one colour only, same colour. Back it, don't do it more than once because it's, your brush will steal it back again. One in, touch, away. Now you should be able to see the surface of that, like a wet, little bit more. A little bit more that.
Oh, mine is too thin. Water.
See how wet that was? See how the wet surface.
Lots more of them. Lots more of them. So don't bubbles.
Okay. Okay. A little bit more in there, I think. Just touch them. And again, don't brush it about, just touch it. Just touch it. It's only because you want it.
Paper is flat.
Oh, this is why you need a paper stretcher.
Okay. This is method one. Now I want you to put some more water into a different mixing bowl and put a totally different colour into that and mix it. And then make a new square.
Really must invest
Excuse me? Not wet enough, darling. Not wet enough. Not enough paint on that.
Ross, do you want?
Oh, no, you're brushing it. Stop brushing it. Lift it.
It's not a brush,
Lift
you know.
it.
Have you got a spare one?
Lift it.
Have it upstairs,
Rose,
do you want me to get it?
Rose, listen. Lift it over and touch it onto there. Is that solid paint on the edge there?
On the edge? I'm doing this in here.
More water in there then.
She's had a chocolate bar on that's melted in the sun.
Yes. Mixing. You're not mixing, darling. Mixing. Hey, mixing. Then lift it over and touch it in the middle of the square you made.
This in the middle.
We're doing a new square.
Yeah.
Do you draw it, or do you?
Well, it doesn't matter, as long as you do it
That doesn't
quickly.
matter.
The point
Yeah.
is, it begins to dry.
Yeah.
And if it begins to dry before you get the whole thing finished, you get a line inside the square.
All right. So
Of the
you
drying
can just
line.
draw the square if you want to fit
Yeah.
it.
We're doing
Yeah.
a new square now. A new square.
Yeah.
No colour.
New colour, new square, about as far away from that one as it is. If you do an inch and a half or inch square, make your next one an inch away from it. Like a chessboard, yeah. But leaving a gap between the two. Eventually, you'll fill the gap. You're brushing too much down. Lift it over. Once you've marked it all over, now touch it on. Back again. Back again. Back again. Back again. Only once. That's it. Back again.
So,
Back again. Yeah. No, wasn't it yet? Look, you dab once.
been used for other
Fill your
things.
brush. Touch it once. Back again. That's it. And that's it. Go on. And again. Everybody who starts this system, they're amazed how wet I mean. No, it isn't wet enough then.
Is it so thin?
No, that was something. Yeah. Yeah, use a new brush, otherwise you get some
I
blue.
think it's Jules, but
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
no problem,
Now
yeah.
can you see how wet that is now?
I've got to bring masking tape. I brought the
Yeah.
brown tape to stretch more paper. Yeah, if you need to stretch anymore.
Well, you see mine, okay.
It's like a tile, isn't it? Like a glazed tile.
Yeah, look, you can see the liquid moves about on it. Yeah. I promise you, this is essential because in order to get the... Sorry, excuse me. I'm not going to talk if you don't talk over me, so shut up.
Do you need something?
You can't, can you? Is it like that all the time?
yes.
God, Stephen. Right.
No, I'm
The,
not.
no, you're not. The point is the characteristic of the paper that's so significant is that it allows no spread from the mark you've made. There's no blotting paper effect, if you know what I'm talking about. A seeping away from that square. That's the magical thing about this watercolour paper. It keeps it where it is, so the wetter you make it, the more, the wetter the fibre becomes in the paper. The paper is held together with, would you believe, a very weak glue called gum arabic. So that gum arabic is being softened in the paper, and it lets go of the fibre and opens a little bit, and the little tiny grains of pigment, of paint, then can fall down inside the paper, which is another thing I use, which is gravity. I have to paint flat because it's so wet. I tip it, it'll all run down the bottom of the paper. So gravity now is dragging the pigment down inside the paper, and that is significant because the weak gum arabic in there, if you leave paint thick on the surface of a watercolour painting, when it's dry, you could scratch it off with your fingernail. So it has to be absolutely within the paper to be permanent. And one of the beauties of watercolour painting is that you can see the paper when it's dry, see the paper through the paint. So it has a texture which is the texture of the paper, not of the paint. In comparison with oil painting, in which much of the aesthetic pleasure of oil painting is to do with looking at the surface. And if you run your fingers over an oil painting, you can actually feel the ripply. Now go in the National Gallery and go up to one of Rembrandt's self-portraits and do that with your fingers. Don't tell them I sent you mine. You know what I mean now? It's got a surface to it, which watercolour painting cannot have because of the inability of the pigment to stick on the surface. Do you follow the logic of this? And so it has to be put inside the paper. And this is the best way I know of doing it. Thank God the paper has the peculiar qualities of holding it where it is. I said this to some kids in the school the other day. I said it has no blotting paper effect, and they didn't know how I was talking about. Kids don't use blotting paper anymore. Amazing, isn't it? Okay. Now this is still method one, right? One pigment only. In any colour, of course. I always say never use black and never use white, because white's made of chalk and black's made of charcoal, and they don't happily enter the paper in the way that these other pigments do. Yeah. Right. But I'll talk about that later, but I'll talk about tone, which is what these two colours are about. Now then, technique one then is one colour only, mixed and put on as wet as this. Next technique number two, is to mix two colours together, or three, and never more than three, because if I mixed all of those colours together, it would end up as a grey. So three will hold their own, 4 begins to get grey, and the more you put in, the greyer it gets. So never more than 3. Never more than 3. How often?
3. Never more than 3.
That's amazing how you know that.
That was 4 words. Never more than 3.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
I must be a fine teacher.
Yes, you are.
I'm ready with the next one.
Yeah, we're all ready for the next one.
Right, next session then, I want you now to take the 2 colours you've already used and mix them together and make a new square, the product of those 2 colours. You follow what I'm saying? And
in a new well.
no, start again.
In a new.
Oh,
Yeah.
we don't want us to transfer them.
You can do if you like.
Or not.
It's a question of whether you remember. Or take one of them and add the other colour into the other one, then you have to mix them together.
So we don't need them
Don't need you will do, you see, that's the point.
now. No, these colours are all messed up.
You will need them again.
Oh, I don't know, new things.
That's what I'm trying